Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical here on YouTube at Stillman & Co. And as Kelsey says in the chat, Kelsey, you know I love you. Do not forget to hit the like and subscribe if you have not subscribed already. As Trent says in the chat, happy Monday, everyone. I know the distinguished gentleman, Trent says, is going to come in here and hate on Sam Darnold. He of the 4 interceptions. And yes, that will be covered on today's Titans Monday because unlike other people, I do not run and hide. When Sam Darnold throws 4 interceptions and his team loses, I do not run and hide. Other people may run and hide and pretend like, oh, no, you know, this didn't. No. We will discuss that at some point. But it is Titans Monday, and on Titans Monday, we start on the Titans. Again, thanks to Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, our presenting sponsor. Please like and subscribe. And when it comes to the Titans, I think there are a lot of different discussions that can be had about yesterday's game, and they're not all negative. I mean, for starters, it's not the end of the world that they lost to the Texans. We all expected them to lose to the Texans. They were competitive yesterday. That was a competitive ball game. If that game had been one of those international games or a Thursday night game, or God forbid somebody was stupid at Monday Night Football and put that on as a Monday night, if that was a standalone primetime game where we had to watch it going in thinking, the Titans and the Texans, and we put it on and watched it, we'd walk away saying, you know what? That was kind of entertaining. Keyword there, by the way, kind of. It was kind of entertaining, yesterday's game. They had the big play at the end from Cam Ward at the end of the game, which was a good sign. They had a touchdown drive to tie it late, and they still lost to go 1-9, and they maintain their draft status as the current number 1 pickers in the 2026 NFL draft. So yesterday's result, the loss to the Texans, was not without some sort of positive to it, or without, again, a couple of positives. But it's also tough when trying to analyze the state of the Titans. It's tough having lived through the Ken Whisenhunt era with the 2-14 season followed by the 3-13 season, where Mike Mularkey was trying to clean up Whisenhunt's mess as the interim coach. And earlier in the year, Titan fans were saying, this is the worst it has ever been. And I tried to push back on that narrative. And I tried to say, hold on. I lived through 2014. I lived through 2015. I lived through the Whisenhunt era. Now, I didn't say it was worse in the Whisenhunt era and that it was better now. I just said they were equally awful. But after yesterday's loss, I'm starting to think this might be the most depressed I have ever been as a Tennessee Titan fan. Because, and I can't explain it, but I do not see a light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to the Tennessee Titans. Again, I try not to be a slave of the moment. I try not to go to a restaurant and have a really good meal and then say, that's the best meal I ever had. I try not to be over dramatic. And earlier this year, again, when people said, this is the worst it's ever been, I pushed back and said, hey, they were 3-13 under Ken Whisenhunt. They earned the number 1 pick in the draft. They were 2-14 the year before and ended up with the number 2 pick because Tampa Bay apparently was just as bad. This is not the worst it's ever been. This is not the worst. But now I'm not sure we can say that. And there are 2 specific reasons that I'm not sure we can say the Whisenhunt era was either definitively worse than what we're watching now or as bad as we're watching now. And I have those 2 specific reasons. The first is the obvious one. It's the quarterback. Again, if I believed in the quarterback, if I thought Cam Ward had the talent and the ability to be able to lead this franchise out of the dark ages, I would say it. I don't. And the second is that not only do I not really have faith in the quarterback, but the guys who picked the quarterback are absolutely certain he's the guy. They're going to build a football team around him, expecting him to be able to carry the franchise, and they're going to hire a coach. And they can say whatever they want to say about what they're looking for in a coach. They are going to hire a coach with the specific intention of coaching Cam Ward. And I think I saw, maybe it was Terry McCormick or somebody put out there. They said, next year there needs to be a quarterback competition. They need to let the new coach decide who the quarterback's going to be. They do not want to stick the new coach with a quarterback that he didn't draft in Cam Ward. Cam Ward's going to be the quarterback next year. I mean, what are we talking about? They took him number 1 overall. And the prerequisite to hiring any of these coaches is when we meet with you, are you going to say you like Cam Ward? Like when we interview you, we're going to say, what's your plan for Cam Ward? And let me tell you this. Whoever has the best answer to that question is probably going to get the job. Whoever gives them the best fully detailed breakdown of who's going to be the best to coach Cam Ward, that guy's going to get the job. So the entire operation is going to be built around Cam Ward. The general manager picked him. The president of football operations okayed it, had final say. The coach is going to be hired to coach Cam Ward. And again, I'm just not sure Cam Ward's very good. So let's start with Ward, because there seems to be some sort of narrative with Cam Ward that there is just something about that kid because of the way he carries himself, because of his attitude in the locker room, because of the fact that he was a 0-star recruit and he had to go to Incarnate Word. And then after Incarnate Word, he had to go to Washington State. And then after Washington State, he declared for the draft and they said he wasn't very good. So he went to Miami and then he was the number 1 pick in the draft. I mean, how can you bet against that kid? How could you possibly? I mean, come on now. What Cam Ward, the great Cam Ward, what are we talking about? He's up every day at 5 a.m. getting those wide receivers together. He beats the coaches into the facility. And I'm like, that sounds great. If you're producing a movie, it sounds great. Just like it sounds great in Varsity Blues to have the backup quarterback who the coach hates have a great game and a great season to replace the star quarterback, and the star quarterback's girlfriend goes and puts on the whipped cream bikini, and the quarterback says, no, thank you to the whipped cream bikini. It's a great story, but we all were in high school. If we see that whipped cream bikini, I don't know about you. I'm just saying. So when it comes to Cam Ward, it's great that he wakes up at 5 a.m. every day. It's great that every coach that the Titans have had gets up there and talks about just the attitude and the way he carries himself and the way he handles himself, because you can have all the talent in the world and all the ability, but if you don't give a shit about it and you don't dedicate yourself to the game, unless you're some superhuman, and there are a couple of those out there that just, they don't give a rat's ass and they still go out there and bowl. But unless you have some sort of innate ability, to recognize a coverage without having to do the homework, you're not going to be a good quarterback. So it's important, but it's not the end all be all with everything. And when it comes to Cam, it feels like that's all the Titans care about. That's all the Titans harped on when they drafted him he said if we didn't draft him, he was going to kick our ass. Well, he told Brian Callahan that he really meant that. If you don't draft me, I'm going to kick your ass. Well, he got Brian Callahan's ass fired. Brian Callahan got Brian Callahan fired because Brian Callahan's a dope, but he got him fired. So you already screwed that narrative up. So we can love all these things they tell us about Cam, but that's great. But does he have the ability to fix his mechanics so that he can be a somewhat consistently accurate passer? Because while, again, he hit that ball down the sideline yesterday to Chigakonkwo, and that was a beautiful throw down the field to hit Chigakonkwo, he also threw a check down yesterday 3 yards behind Tajay Spears. How can you be a quarterback in the NFL and not be able to accurately hit a running back coming out of the backfield? I don't understand it. So when it comes to Cam, and everybody talks about how, oh, he's such a leader, he's so tough, oh, man, he's been through it all, oh, man, he's got the right attitude, he wakes up at 5 a.m. That's great. But he can't throw the ball accurately, consistently, to a running back coming out of the backfield. He misses wide open receivers on a consistent basis every single game. Does he have the ability to fix his mechanics? You tell me about all the hero worship stuff. And I'm talking about the actual football skills that matter. You know, accuracy, that matters. And there are good quarterbacks out there. There are guys that are good guys who work hard, who show up every day, who give it their all, that have a professional approach. They never get too high. They never get too low. They know the right time to pull somebody aside and say something. They've got a great relationship with the coach. They understand the offense, but they just don't have the talent to consistently make winning plays for an organization. There are tons of people like that. You know what they're called? Backups. That's what they're called. Brian Hoyer. I was told, and remember, Floyd was with the Patriots when Brian Hoyer and Tom Brady were there. I was told that Brian Hoyer spent an entire year doing everything the way Tom Brady did it. He prepared like Tom Brady. He ate like Tom Brady. He slept like Tom Brady. I don't know if he was going out with Bridget Moynihan or Giselle Bundchen like Tom Brady, because that's, involves somebody else wanting to do that. But again, he did all those things. Problem is he's not Tom Brady. He's Brian Hoyer. And you can't take a backup quarterback with the number 1 pick, or else you're going to get fired unless you get lucky and you find Brock Purdy in the 7th round. And this is what bothers me the most about the current state of the Titans. Everybody's going to say this isn't about Cam. Everybody is going to say it's about the state of the roster. Everybody's going to say it's about the mistakes that J-Rob made with Isaiah Wilson and Caleb Farley, and the mistakes that Rand Carthon made. And one of them is just staring us in the face every Sunday, and it's J.C. Latham at right tackle. And J.C. Latham was atrocious yesterday. He didn't give up a sack to Will Anderson. Yeah, because they helped. Every time they were in a passing situation, he false started 3 times. You can't have that. This is the NFL. You cannot have that. And so a lot of people are going to talk about the state of the roster and the state of the team, and they're going to say, no rookie quarterback would look good on this team. No quarterback would look good on this team. And that's great. But again, if the quarterback cannot accurately put the ball where the ball is supposed to go on a consistent basis, then he cannot play in the NFL. And I put one little asterisk by that, and I will say if he has a secondary elite trait, like Lamar Jackson's athleticism, then he can play in the NFL with being a little inaccurate. Cam does not have Lamar Jackson's athleticism. He is not as fast as Lamar Jackson. I know he had the nice scramble yesterday, but he is not Lamar Jackson. And I don't think even the biggest Bobo out there would try to argue that. When it comes to Cam, and not their play styles, but their production kind of seems similar to me. Cam reminded me a lot of Kyler Murray. Again, not the play style, not the way he plays, because Kyler does have elite athleticism. Now, he's tiny, and he doesn't seem to work very hard, but Kyler does have elite athleticism. But Cam is his situation is a lot like Kyler's. because Kyler went first overall to a bad football team in a bad quarterback draft. Daniel Jones, Dwayne Haskins, Drew Lock were the other three quarterbacks in that draft. He can make some special plays. We've seen Kyler make some special plays. We've seen Cam make some special plays. But in the end, when it comes to Kyler Murray in Arizona, does Kyler Murray have the ability to ever be more than he's been over the last 7 years? Which is, he's good enough to start. He's one of the best 32. But is Kyler Murray ever going to elevate the franchise? Because I'm sure they've gone through states in Arizona where they had a really bad roster, and then they had a really good roster, and then they tore it down, and then they had high picks, and they did all these things, and yet they still suck. Because Kyler Murray has a ceiling for how good he can be. But Arizona decided that's our guy. I don't know why. I guess the general manager or the owner or someone got an absolute hard-on for Kyler Murray. I never liked Kyler Murray. In college, I never thought this guy's going to be a star in the NFL. They, though, loved him. They hired a specific coach for him. They gave him a contract, even though they didn't have to give him the contract. I remember when Kyler was holding out, and I was thinking to myself, why are you going to give Kyler this massive contract? Doesn't Kyler need to, earn it? And it's like, well, Kyler says after year 3, he wants to get paid. Okay, I want to get paid too, but you got to have the production. Or I guess in my case, if you have the production, it only makes it harder to get paid. When it comes to Kyler in Arizona, they've made the playoffs one time. They got housed in that playoff game. And they are still terrible. And it's taken them 7 years. 7 years of their lives to finally realize, yeah, Kyler's just not good enough. In the end, could we have been better around Kyler? Could we have hired a better coach for Kyler? Could we have had a better offense? Yeah, probably. But would it have made Kyler Lamar Jackson or Jaden Daniels? And the answer is no. And that's how I feel about Cam. And that is that because they fell in love with him for whatever reason they fell in love, whether it was the 0-star story, whether it was him saying, I'll kick your ass if you don't draft me, I don't know what it is. But at some point in this process, they absolutely fell in love. I mean, in love with this guy. And because they fell in love with him and they used the first pick on him, this isn't going to be Will Levis 2.0, where you give the guy a year, you pretend you think he can be Dan Marino, had a bad senior season, falls back in the draft, but he's super talented and he becomes Dan Marino. Instead of that, the Titans ripped the Band-Aid off with Levis, said no thank you, and they've moved on. They're not going to do that with Cam. They're going to hire a coach to coach Cam. They're going to draft players to help Cam. They are going to sign players in free agency specifically because of Cam. Well, they have a player on their practice squad who they will never play in a real game because the guy does not belong in the NFL, who Titan fans on Twitter won't shut up about simply because of Cam. They are going to retrofit the entire organization just for Cam. And again, I get it. You build your organization around your quarterback. That's why you pick a guy number 1 overall. But at the end of the day, the guy has to have the ability to be worth all of that. And I'm sorry, but when you throw the ball as inaccurately as he does on a consistent basis, that's not good enough. Well, Jared, it was the number 1 defense yesterday. Well, Jared, he had to throw to Chigakonkwo. Well, Jared, yeah. And he still didn't throw for over 200 yards. Think about that. He quarterbacked a 95-yard touchdown drive. And he still didn't throw for 200 yards yesterday. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's unbelievable. And people will say they don't have good enough players. Okay, then how did Chigakonkwo make a 39-yard catch? Why don't they throw the ball to Chigakonkwo more? How about Tajay Spears? He caught a pass early in the game, ran up with it, made a good play. Give him the ball more? No. We got to throw the ball to Mason Kinsey. And again, he missed the throws to Mason Kinsey. Those are wide open throws. This is the NFL. This is not college. You were picked number one. Those throws have to be completed. And if you can't complete those throws, then you stink. And of course, the Titans are never going to sit there and say, holy crap, we fucked up. Boy, I'll tell you, all those draft gurus were right. Jared Stillman was right. What were we thinking not taking the Giants trade? But until they're willing to say that, until they're willing to entertain the idea, all they're going to do is just throw more good money after bad, and that's going to give us another wasted season next year and another wasted season the year after that. And that's why I'm depressed as a Titan fan, because I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. The guy who is overseeing the rebuild still has to answer to the person who has caused this massive shit show for the last 3 years, and it's the owner. When we were living in 2015 in the Whisenhunt era, when we were living in 2015, there was a sense about Amy and the Adams family group that they were hands off, or they didn't really care, or they didn't really know what they were doing, or they were going to try to sell the team or whatever. But they weren't looked at as just totally incompetent saboteurs. But I don't know how you can look at the last 3 years and the coaches and the GMs and everything that they've done and not said, boy, I tell you, this owner's got no shot of getting it right. I don't think you can argue anything today, but Amy has actively lit the franchise on fire. And I get it. John Robinson drafted Caleb Farley, but John Robinson never lost more than 7 times in a season. You've lost 9 times this season, and there are still 7 games to go. You got rid of Mike Vrabel in favor of Rand Carthon, who looks like a moron hosting a CBS podcast. So they have a quarterback who I'm not sure has the ability to be a franchise quarterback. I haven't seen the ability to be a franchise quarterback out of this guy. They are committed to that quarterback because they picked him first in a draft that had no good quarterbacks in it. They are going to hire a coach to work with the general manager who, and again, I'm not saying Mike Borgonzi stinks, but Mike Borgonzi was the general manager of this team, and it has been just a heinous roster. I mean, there are things they could have done in the offseason that would have been better than the things they did do. And Mike Borgonzi overdrafted the quarterback. And a new coach will ultimately be picked by the woman who fired the winning GM and the former coach of the year and replaced them with complete morons in both positions. So as a Titan fan, I have to ask, where is the light at the end of the tunnel? What am I supposed to feel good about? And that is what makes this incredibly hard to be a Titan fan. And that is that each and every week, it feels like a referendum on why they shouldn't have picked Cam Ward. And in the end, it turns into the realization that this team's going to keep shooting itself in the foot and they're never going to be good again. That's the sad part. That's the tough part. That's the part that hurts. So that's the first thing. And we'll get to your reaction here on the program all day long, here on the YouTube chat and whatnot. There is something yesterday. I mean, Jeffery Simmons, and I've been giving Jeffery Simmons a lot of credit. Jeffery Simmons was mad after the game yesterday, and I've got a thought I have not heard yet. We'll get to that coming up. First, I want to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They make my life a lot easier because anytime something's wrong in the house, I take my phone out, go right to happyhiller.com, and usually by the next morning, somebody is here to fix it. And they give you 2-hour windows, and they are there inside the window, and they get the work done, and I pay them, and they leave, and they don't come back because they get it fixed correctly. That is why I love Hiller. It's not like I want to pay to fix an issue with a toilet or a sink or an electrical, but I enjoy paying knowing that I don't have to pay anything more after that. And that's because they have 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work that Hiller performs, they will make it right. Learn more by visiting happyhiller.com. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Nashville Predators, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and the Tennessee Volunteers. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Okay, so let's get to these Jeffery Simmons comments after the game yesterday. So Jeffery Simmons was pissed after the game was over, and he said he's done sugarcoating it and that the offense needs to play better. Here's a snippet of an angry Jeffery Simmons yesterday. Take a look.
In the false starts, we need to be better. I mean, we can't keep sitting up here saying the same thing, trying to sugarcoat it for the media, for anybody. And I said it in the locker room, I said it on the field. I'm tired of sugarcoating. I mean, we need to be better. At the end of the day, we need to protect Cam better. Simple. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about complementing football. We have to play better team football. Sometimes the offense will be playing good, sometimes the defense, but how can we play good as a team, three phases? We not playing good team football right now, and it's showing. And Mike said it at practice Friday. We had freaking 4 false starts Friday. We playing at home. We shouldn't have that many false starts. Don't care. Like, I'm tired of saving feelings. I'm tired of losing.
Okay. So Jeffery Simmons gets up there and says, like, I'm tired of it. I'm done sugarcoating it. I'm done pumping sunshine. I'm done with the bullshit. And I don't exactly know how to feel about this. And I don't exactly know how I should feel about this. You know, it's kind of like when I found out I was having a child, and there was a part of me that was like, man, what would Floyd say? Like, what would he, that's where I really missed Floyd. You know, there have been a handful of life things that have happened since he's passed away, and I've missed being able to say, Floyd, what do you think about that? But this is another example where I miss Floyd, whose opinion I really trusted. Because when it comes to Jeffery Simmons and what he said, he's not wrong. I mean, 5 false starts in a game? Are you fucking kidding me? All the penalties, all the mistakes, got it. And for starters, all I did was rail on Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan and Chad Brinker during their offseason of toxic positivity. I echoed those same sentiments when Brian Callahan was trying to sell everybody on the Pee Wee program this past spring. And I felt like it was all false confidence that stemmed from nowhere except thinking that you could talk things you wanted to happen into existence. Which, by the way, for the record, you cannot. Although never forget, Chad Brinker's "hope is a powerful thing" comment to Mike Keith all those years ago. And so, on one hand, there's a part of me that says, good on Jeffery Simmons to say, fuck the happy horse crap talk, I ain't doing it. That's good. But at the same time, that's a defensive player who pointed the finger at the offense, and that typically doesn't work well, even for bad teams. Now, I know how the Titan fans will feel about it. Yeah, Jeff, way to stand up. I'm glad Jeff's done with it. Jeff wants to win. Jeff, I see you, Jeff. I know that's going to be the fan reaction because you're mad at the offense too. But remember how up in arms Simmons got and Cody Barton got and everybody else got when Cam Ward had that "we ass" comment? Apparently, Warren Moon picked up the phone and called Cam and said, son, that's not how a quarterback leads a football team. Well, I mean, when Cam said that, he said, "we ass." And I think the reason the players and everybody else got all upset about it is because the players felt like that was Cam saying, those guys are ass. Not, I'm included in the group, even though I think Cam was including himself in the group. So people got their panties in a bunch over that. And now Jeffery Simmons is pointing fingers because that's exactly what he's doing. He pointed fingers at the offense yesterday. Now, a lot of people will say, well, that was at J.C. Latham. And Again, I'm mad at J.C. Latham too. I've never liked J.C. Latham since the second they drafted him, and they told me he was going to play left tackle, and I'm like, he's too fat. I mean, I give J.C. Latham credit for showing up in shape, and I think J.C. Latham will probably end up being an okay right tackle. But the fact that they passed Brock freaking Bowers for him, I'll never forgive that. But I'm also not on the team. And Simmons is. And again, Simmons saying like, hey, we've got to play complementary football. What's complementary football? Complementary football is the defense gets a stop, the offense, the special teams gets a good return, the offense scores on a shorter field. That's complementary football. So when Simmons is saying we're not playing complementary football, he's saying we're not playing offense. When Simmons is saying we need to protect Cam better, he's talking about the offensive line. When Simmons says we had all these false starts and we keep doing it, he's talking about Latham. He's pointing fingers. And again, like I said, even though I agree with what he's saying, I just don't know how I should feel about the Titans players pointing fingers at each other after they lose games. Because the truth is, a football team is a lot like a marriage. Marriage isn't always 50-50 unless you're splitting up assets in a divorce. The way marriage works is sometimes you give 100% and you get back 0. Sometimes your partner feels like they're giving 100% and you're giving in 0. And the expectations, in my opinion, for a healthy relationship is not a running scoreboard of how many times you've been there for your partner and how many times your partner has been there for you. The expectation is that your partner will always be there for you, no matter what, and that you'll always be there for them when they need you. Football is no different. Some games, the defense gets absolutely gutted, and they need the offense to go out there and put up 38 points. And it's one of those games where you got to hope you've got the ball last, and the offense can win the game for you. Excuse me, by the way, I have a cold my son has apparently picked up from preschool and given to me. As I apologize about that. But there are times where, again, offenses will have to go win the game. Like, it'll be like, hey, man, I mean, the other team's got Phillip Rivers in his prime with LaDainian Tomlinson and Antonio Gates, and we're doing the best we can, but, like, you may get lucky that we get you a turnover here at some point in the second half, but you're going to have to go win the game. That's going to happen. And sometimes there's going to be those ugly games where it's like, hey, if the offense gets you 7 points, can you win with that? Just that? Can you do that? The point is, a successful football team does not pit us, the offense or the defense, against them. And it's a very tough line to judge. It's an insanely fine line to walk. Because on one hand, we all want the Titans to be accountable, and we want the Titans to tell the truth. And in this instance, Jeffery Simmons is doing that. He's holding J.C. Latham accountable by saying, hey, you got to do better, okay? Like, I'm tired of losing. You need to pick up the slack. But I also know that showing up your teammates publicly and in the media very rarely translates to success. So I'm very conflicted about how I feel about the Simmons comments. And I have to tell you, Mike McCoy's attitude today when asked about it, basically being like, Jeff wants to win, and that's what leaders do. It had me shrugging my shoulders a little bit, thinking to myself, is that what leaders do? Like, did Peyton Manning ever get out there and talk about how the defense needed to play better? Like, I just, again, we always talk about how, you don't do those things in the media. You handle that stuff in-house. You don't point fingers publicly. You don't. Simmons was pointing fingers yesterday. And I get it. It's a fine line. He's the team leader. But that is pointing fingers. And I've never seen a successful football team where they're all pointing fingers at each other in the locker room. If you're going to be upset about what Cam said and Simmons was, well, what Simmons said was what Cam said times 5. In reality, and again, I'm not married to this take because I am conflicted by it. Simmons probably shouldn't have said what he said yesterday about the false starts and the 3-and-outs and complimentary football. And again, putting it on the offense. Because Cam got asked about it yesterday. I thought Cam had a great response, by the way, where Cam was like, I'm frustrated right there with him. I understand the frustration Simmons has. I'm glad Simmons is frustrated. I'm glad somebody over there gives a shit. But at the same time, you are publicly making it us versus them inside your own locker room. And I just don't think that ever really works. So I appreciate how tired Simmons is of the losing because, truth be told, I'm tired of the losing too. But it's not a good sign of a functional operation when the one leader the team has is saying, enough is enough. They need to go do more after one of the games. It just didn't feel right. Simmons calling out the offense. The offense sucks. J.C. Latham shouldn't be getting flagged for all of those false start penalties. But let's say you go out there against Seattle this week and Sam Darnold lights you up. Does J.C. Latham have the right to stand at his locker saying, they need to go out and do more? They need to go out and they should have gotten 2 interceptions. They should have got, because again, I understand that the Titans gave up 16 points, but Jeffery Simmons in the offense could have stopped the Texans on the last drive of the game. Could they have not? They could have kept Davis Mills for going 26 of 41 for 274 and a touchdown. They could have forced a turnover yesterday. They didn't force a single one. So again, when it comes to Jeffery Simmons getting up there saying they need to do more, well, you can also say the same thing about the offense. You knew this was the number 1 defense in the league. You knew you've got a rookie quarterback. You know Calvin Ridley's hurt. You know that now Alec Iomanor's out. Chimere DK's out. So you're playing with really practice squad Scarbinis. There is an argument that can be made. Hey, you could have done more too. So that's the one thing I'll say when it comes to the Simmons stuff is I agree with him. I appreciate how much he hates losing because I hate losing too, and I'm tired of it. But this really is a pointing fingers thing here. That is a defensive player calling out the offense. And I just don't think that ever really works in the NFL. When's the last time an offensive player called out a defensive player and it ended in the team being closer? You know, I've learned in life, in my personal relationships, conflict has grown them as strong as anything else. But that is 1v1 conflict. That is a conversation with somebody having a quote-unquote hard conversation with that person. I'm not sure how many times I've gossiped bad about somebody and it has ended up being a positive. Though I do like gossiping, there is that. So that's the second thing on the Simmons front. Again, I'm conflicted on how to feel about it. I just don't think pointing fingers is a good idea, and I kind of felt like that was a pointing fingers thing. All right, let's talk about Mike McCoy, because that kind of takes me to the real issue why I think Simmons said something and why he's so frustrated and felt the need to finally get in front of a camera and say, fuck it, we need to start playing better. And that's Mike McCoy. Now, I absolutely love this little kind of media side thing that's developing as we trudge through the rest of this pointless season. If you haven't noticed, now that I bring this to your attention, and if you have been paying attention, there's no way you couldn't have seen this. Paul Kaharski absolutely hates Mike McCoy. Like, I am starting to enjoy how much Kaharski absolutely hates Mike McCoy. And he hates Mike McCoy for two reasons. Number one, he hates Mike McCoy because Mike McCoy gives you the most canned coach speak answers in the history of the NFL. I mean, I'll give you this. He looks like a robot up there answering all these questions. There's like no emotion. There's no real passion behind it. There's no real, he's just up there answering the questions because, well, they paid me a little extra to be interim coach. So it's part of the job. I have to answer these questions. So fire away. And then you ask a question and it's like, okay, response 72. You know, as coaches, it's important every week that we get to work right away. And so right now we're working through the game plan as coaches. And that's something that during the week we'll develop. And as we come together with the game plan and then implement it in practice on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we'll get a good feel of where we're headed in the game. And that's what the process that us coaches go through. And we've really worked hard at our process. And then it's like got to flip to side B because, you know, Mike McCoy's kind of old. So it's like a cassette tape. He's got to flip a little bit. And then he goes right back into coach talk. I get that. The other reason Kaharski hates him is because of the conservatism with the way he's coaching. And in both cases, I agree. Jeffery Simmons told the media about the false starts in practice, which apparently Simmons may have been overstating a little bit. But he told the media about the false starts in practice because he wants everybody to know that these mistakes exist and that the people who should do something about it obviously aren't doing anything to stop it. And that's the coach. But the truth is, and I mean this with all due respect to Mike McCoy, and again, I seriously mean with all due respect, the truth is Mike McCoy probably doesn't care much. I can tell you right now, he doesn't give a shit that Kaharski thinks he should have gone for it on 4th and 2 yesterday. And I have to ask, why should he? Mike McCoy's just doing what he's told. He's coming in every morning and he's flipping on the lights and he's keeping the operation rolling for the league-mandated next 7 weeks. And then after that, he'll pack his stuff and he'll go back to whatever purgatory city he lives in and he'll regroup with the family and then he'll go be a quarterback's coach or an offensive coordinator or something. And he'll go on with his life. Now, he has been an atrocious interim head coach, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, that's what he is. He's an interim coach. And right now, he's doing the bare minimum required of him until it's time for him to leave, and they'll go out and get a coach who will do things his way. So I understand the frustration with Mike McCoy, and I certainly don't think that they're doing really anything for Cam Ward with Mike McCoy as the coach. And we've seen Cam be upset with Mike McCoy. And Kaharski every week has something that he just has to lose his shit about when it comes to Mike McCoy. But it doesn't really matter. Like, we can talk about Mike McCoy until the cows come home. But it doesn't really matter. Mike McCoy won't be the coach of this team in 2 months. And who cares if they had kicked the field goal on 4th and 2 or went for it anyway? Do you really care? Again, there are times I see where I might go for it. Fuck it. I want to see the offense out there more. 4th and 3, go for it. What do I care? You're going to lose the game anyways. But as far as things I'll remember, it's not like I'm looking for Mike McCoy to change the culture and trajectory of the Tennessee Titans franchise. I just don't think it matters. But he is a terrible interim coach. And the press conferences he has, the only enjoyment I get out of the press conferences for Mike McCoy is listening to Kaharski badger him about his conservatism. And today McCoy was like, you've already asked me that before and I've already answered it. Moving on. And it's like, McCoy, he doesn't care. You know, Vrabel used to get a little irritated with Paul. And Brian Callahan tried to be nice with Paul. Although there was that one time after the Broncos game when Callahan was like, would you have the play sheet, Paul? Malarkey used to get a little sensitive with Paul. That's when I started covering it every day. McCoy doesn't care. And that's the problem is that with all of this stuff, McCoy doesn't care. He doesn't care. He doesn't have to care. He doesn't. It's a stark contrast from Mike Kafka in New York. Mike Kafka got the interim job. This is a tryout for 2 months for Mike Kafka. Like, he is trying to be the New York Giants head coach. And so what did he do? As soon as he becomes head coach, he immediately changes the meeting schedules. He changes the quarterback. He benches the draft pick, to show I'm the coach. I'm in charge. These are my rules. I'm nothing like the old guy. This is how I run the team. Mike McCoy walks in every morning with a coffee cup in his hand, opening the door, saying, all right, guys, game planning meeting at 9 a.m. I'll see you then. And that's fine. But that's what it is. And I do think this team needs a real coach. Like, they need a real coach, and they're going to have to just get through it with Mike McCoy. I don't want to say he's doing the best he can, but he's doing his substitute teacher job, and then they'll bring in a real coach. And then it's up to the real coach to establish the culture and set boundaries and rules and everything like what Mike Vrabel has done so far in New England this year. Now, because I know it's going to happen, people are going to want to talk about Sam Darnold's performance and about the 4 interceptions that Sam Darnold had yesterday against the LA Rams. I know it's Titan Monday, but I know you people, before we get to your reaction in the chat, I know your people want to talk about this. Sam Darnold tied a career-high 4 interceptions yesterday. And after postgame live was over, which was about halftime of the afternoon games, I primarily watched Rams-Seahawks until the Rams-Seahawks game was over and then flipped to the end of Broncos-Chiefs. I'm sure most of you watched Broncos-Chiefs. I watched Rams-Seahawks, want to see how Sam Darnold did. And the truth is, Sam Darnold was awful yesterday. And I wouldn't say his biggest mistake, because interception 2 and interception 4 were both horrendous. Interception 4 was like, Sam Darnold, now you're pressing. Now you're doing what everybody says you do in the big games. Now you're doing it, where you just throw the ball right to the other team. But the thing that made me the most mad, and I was watching the game rooting for Sam Darnold. I'm rooting for the take to be right. They had 17 seconds left, and they needed about 15 yards to get into real, true, makeable field goal range. They had a timeout and 17 seconds. And Sam Darnold got up there, and he took the snap, and he avoided the rush, and he rolled out, and he was looking for somebody to throw it to, and then he threw it away. And then there were 10 seconds on the clock. And I thought, dude, you're a veteran quarterback. You can't waste 7 seconds like that. And I think those 7 seconds cost them the game. I think if they had had another offensive play, they would have been able to gain 8 or 9 yards, which would have turned that 61-yard kick into a 53-yard kick, which is a makeable kick in today's NFL. Although 61 is a makeable kick in today's NFL too. And so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Sam Darnold didn't play like absolute shit yesterday. He was awful. I kept waiting for him to get better. And I did think in the fourth quarter, after interception 4, he leads him down for a touchdown drive. And then you got to give the Rams credit, because that punt, you talk about complimentary football, that punt the Rams had before the Seahawks last drive won them the game, where the punter punted the ball to the 1-yard line, and it went out right before it hit the pylon. If it hits the pylon, it's a touchback. That thing went, it was beautiful. He was awful. And Sam Darnold, the Rams must have the Sam Darnold kryptonite, because they locked him up in the playoffs last year, and then he's gone out and lit everybody up this season, and they locked him up this week, 4 interceptions. I think it is a testament to both Darnold and the Seahawks that they were in the game in spite of 4 interceptions. But let me tell you what really hit me after the game. And again, when it came to my desire for the Titans to add Sam Darnold, it wasn't because I thought he was a league MVP candidate, though after yesterday, he may not be anymore. That's not why. I told you, I would have drafted Drake May. I would have drafted Jaden Daniels. I would have drafted Caleb Williams over Sam Darnold. I wouldn't draft Cam Ward over Sam Darnold. I wouldn't take J.J. McCarthy over Sam Darnold. And the reason why is because I believe Sam Darnold is a true professional starting quarterback. He's not the best. but he is a legitimate starter who you can win with. Can you win the Super Bowl with him? I think he's better than Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts, with the perfect team and the perfect coaching staff, just won the Super Bowl. I think he's a lot like Alex Smith. And in the end, that's probably what the Seahawks are going to get. Alex Smith-like results. But the one thing that Alex Smith brought to that team, as Mike Borgonzi recalls, is stability and leadership. You know, kind of the things we're looking for with the Titans. This was Sam Darnold after the game. And after Sam Darnold speaks, you're going to hear from Ernest Jones. Remember Ernest Jones? You're going to hear from Ernest Jones, who was the defensive player that the Seahawks made available. This is Sam Darnold going to the podium instead of waiting for them to ask him about his interceptions or doing that crybaby horse shit like Ryan Tannehill after the Bengals game when he was like, we thought we were going to win and we just didn't. And instead of that, here's what Sam Darnold said, and listen to what Ernest Jones has to say behind it. Take a look.
What's going on? Yeah, obviously a tough one today. I felt like, despite the turnovers, we moved the ball. We just couldn't finish in the red zone. I think that was a big thing today. And then, obviously, like I said, can't turn the ball over as much as I did today. I'll learn from it, watch the tape, grow from it. Got to give credit to, the Rams. Obviously, they're a really good defense, really good team. But, I got to be better personally. And I know we'll bounce back and learn and grow from this one.
I mean, Sam's been balling. Like, if we want to try to define Sam by this game or what, man, Sam's had us in every game. So for him to sit there and say, "Oh, that's my fault," no, it's not. There was plays that defensively we could have made plays. There were opportunities where we could have got better stops. It's football, man. And he's our quarterback. We got his back, and we got anything to say, quite frankly.
Boy, I tell you, I like that Ernest Jones now. Yeah, he's our quarterback. And if you got anything to say about it, fuck you. I love it. I got to tell you, that right there, that whole interaction, the Darnold thing where he gets up to the podium and just says to the media, "What's up, guys? Yeah, I sucked. I turned the ball over. I'll learn from it. I'm going to have to move forward. We're going to get ready for the game. We thought we had a chance to win." All the good, okay stuff, the bad stuff, That's good leadership. And that leadership has obviously gotten through to the defensive players because here's Ernest Jones, who's up there saying, "Man, Sam's balling. And if you want to say something about Sam, fuck you." That is leadership. Not just from Darnold, Ernest Jones too. I'm guessing that entire organization is incredibly well buttoned up. A very mature organization from Mike McDonald all the way down. When I saw that interaction, I thought to myself, the Seahawks will be just fine. Sam Darnold will be just fine. Now, he's going to have to figure out whatever this Ram kryptonite is that they have on him, but he'll be just fine. But I am not going to say that his performance was good. I am not going to say that the interceptions weren't his fault. The third one, Greg Olsen on the Fox broadcast. Boy, I tell you, my dad hates Greg Olsen. I can't stand Greg Olsen either. But Greg Olsen, man, he never shuts up. But so Greg Olsen on the Fox broadcast put the interception on Elijah Arroyo. But again, Sam threw 4 interceptions. And he let way too much time off the clock on the 2-minute drill where one more play could have won them the game. See, I don't run when my take's not right. I tell you what happened. And my take is that everything that I wanted Sam Darnold to be, he has been in Seattle. Everything I thought he could be for this team, he showed it right there. Bad game, cost his team the game, went to the podium, took all the blame, and then the next guy up, a defensive player who before this year didn't know him from a jar of Vicks, said, "If you got something to say about him, fuck you." I loved it. Seattle will be just fine. Who do they play next? See if that's a get-right game for them. I'm kidding. They play the Titans next. And I think I'm going to go to the game. All right, let's get to your reaction here on the program. One person says, J.C. Latham needs to be released next year. Okay, let's have the J.C. Latham discussion for a second. I even put up on Twitter yesterday my reaction to when the Titans drafted J.C. Latham on draft night in Nashville, where, again, I turned my phone over so I wouldn't see the picks, and I had the headset on, and when they picked him and I heard Goodell say J.C. Latham, Alabama, I thought, oh, no. And I truly felt that way. And I've never liked J.C. Latham, and I never thought J.C. Latham could play left tackle. I've always thought he was a right tackle, and I was glad when they were moving him over to right tackle. And J.C. Latham false starts too much, and J.C. Latham got hurt and missed the beginning of the year, and it took him a while to catch back up, and J.C. Latham's never going to be a great player. J.C. Latham is never going to be worth the 7th overall pick. He's never going to be worth turning down Brock Bowers for. And again, they needed a left tackle with that pick, and they drafted a right tackle, and they should have drafted Olu Fashanu. That said, J.C. Latham needs to be a core piece of this team. Like, if this team is going to not completely suck anytime soon, and I know we all feel like they're going to suck forever, but if this team is not going to completely suck anytime soon, J.C. Latham has to be the starting right tackle so that they can put him out there and he develops into a solid right tackle, and you pay him a gazillion dollars and you never worry about it. That's what he needs to be. The Minnesota Vikings have a right tackle like that. It's a guy by the name of Brian O'Neill. Do you know who Brian O'Neill is? No, you don't. But that's a good thing, because the Vikings pay Brian O'Neill, and Brian O'Neill plays right tackle, and you never hear from him. Is he as good as Christian Darrisaw, who's an all-pro on the other side? No, he's not. But again, we're looking for a right tackle here. So as much as clearly Jeff Simmons hates J.C. Latham, and as much as J.C. Latham hurt them yesterday, and as much of a bust relative to where they've taken him, he's become, in the grand scheme of things, if this is going to get turned around, it's much easier to turn it around with J.C. Latham than it is without him. It's kind of like Corey Davis. I mean, when you drafted Corey Davis 5th overall and he became a solid number 2 receiver who was good blocking down the field, that's not really worth the value. But if you hit on A.J. Brown in the 2nd round and you've got A.J. Brown as your number 1 receiver and you've got Corey Davis as your number 2 receiver, that's not bad. That's the same case here. If Dan Moore can figure it out at left tackle, and I think Dan Moore's fine. If Dan Moore can figure it out at left tackle, you can accept the fact that J.C. Latham's kind of a bust playing right tackle because he's never going to be a solid game changer, but you need a starting right tackle, and they need J.C. Latham to be that. Kai says, been saying it forever now. As long as the Adams family owns this team, they are going nowhere. Floyd did the impossible and made Bud Adams look somewhat competent. Should we choose another team? Decisions. Here's the thing that bothers me. And look, I like Amy. I'm sure Amy doesn't like me anymore. I like Amy. I've always liked Amy. I thought she treated Floyd incredibly well at the end of his life, and I'll never forget that about her. That said, when it comes to Amy did a good job owning this team from 2015 when she became the controlling owner, really to get Tommy Smith and Susie Adams out of there, and got rid of Ken Whisenhunt and brought back Steve Underwood, and they hired John Robinson, and they hired Mike Mularkey. And again, I think that John Robinson was suffering from my guy syndrome when he fired Mike Mularkey and caused a shitstorm that shouldn't have happened. I don't put that on Amy. And then they hired Mike Vrabel. And Amy did a good job. I'm asking for the return of that Amy. The staying out of it Amy. We lost the Bengals as the number 1 seed, but I'm extending the general manager and I'm extending the coach because I want these two guys working together because what happened to that Amy? Instead, it's been reactive, crazy Amy. It's like a changeling has gotten into her body and is pressing all the wrong buttons on purpose. And as long as that Amy is calling the shots, this team has no chance. Personally, here's what I think. And I think I've talked to enough people to get a feel for this. I think people in the building wish that Amy Adams Strunk was around more because Amy is relying solely on what she's being told by her 3 lieutenants. Burke Nihill, the president and CEO, Chad Brinker, the president of football operations, Bryce Wasserman, her son-in-law. I think that people in the building wish Amy was around more often so that Amy could see the interactions and get an idea of who actually is doing what. But I will agree with you. The reason this team sucks so bad is because of Amy. And there's really no disguising it. I heard today, 3 years ago today, was the Thursday night football game on the road at Green Bay. And I was at that game. And that game, when I think about my life, that game is like the movie Titanic for me. You know where Jack and Rose fuck in the car on the Titanic? And then it flashes to the next scene and the guy's like, iceberg right ahead. Because the Titans were 7-3. They had like a 96% chance of winning the division and going to the playoffs. They had just gone on the road and beaten Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. They had gone toe-to-toe with Kansas City on Sunday Night Football with Malik Willis at quarterback. And I thought, oh my God, like this team, they got a shot. Buffalo, Kansas City, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Tennessee. Let's go. And they didn't win a game the rest of the year. J-Rob got fired. That led to Rand Carthon. Vrabel gets fired. That leads to Brian Callahan. And here we are today, the worst team in ball with no end in sight. What happened to the old Amy? That's what I want to know. JT says it's the Jared Stillman Bowl this week. Cam versus Sam. Yeah, I'll take Sam. DJ says Mike McCoy is so boring. How did he end up with this organization? Mike McCoy, I believe, was the offensive coordinator when Peyton Manning was the quarterback in Denver under Gary Kubiak, if I'm not mistaken. And Brian Callahan was on that coaching staff. That's the connection. And Brian Callahan said that he always looked up to Mike McCoy, and Mike McCoy was a good mentor, and Mike McCoy was the quarterback's coach last year in Jacksonville. Doug Peterson got fired. Mike McCoy was looking for a job. They brought him in to be a senior offensive assistant, and because he had head coaching experience and wasn't overseeing a unit, it was easy when they fired Brian Callahan just to put him in. But he is so boring. Adam from Portland says, bitching about a rookie quarterback on this roster is kind of ridiculous. He's literally been given zero help. I'm not saying he's Joe Montana. I'm saying we don't know shit about him. Well, I mean, all we can go off of is what we see. Like, I know Mason Kinsey sucks too. But when you miss Mason Kinsey, who's that wide open, that tells me you're not an accurate passer. Sometimes I think people just say, oh, the roster stinks. As if the quarterback's not a part of that. It gets me every time. Sanchez says, most of the Cam excuse crowd were saying Sanders loading 10 months ago. TDG, I think that's a shot at you. I will say this, the boo-hoo Shador crew, I mean, I'll give credit to Josina Anderson. Did you see Josina Anderson on Twitter? Talk about fucking embarrassing yourself. Josina Anderson is live tweeting a Browns-Ravens game, which, with all due respect, I couldn't have given a rat's ass about. I was watching Seattle and the Rams, and when Seattle and the Rams would go to commercial, I'd hit the back button on the remote to bring up the multi-view in which I was watching the Chiefs and the Broncos while waiting for the Rams and the Seahawks to come back from commercial. The Browns and the Ravens didn't even cross my mind. I didn't even know they were playing until Shador went in the game, and Twitter started talking about how Shador Sanders was playing in that game. When I saw that again, Josina Anderson on Twitter was like, Shador didn't get all the reps in practice this week. It's not fair. I said, good for you, Josina Anderson. Talk about dying on a hill. And I do remember all of the Titan fans that at the beginning of this were like, Shador Sanders should be the number one pick. I don't hear much from those people anymore. Louis Riddick. By the way, my favorite thing was like during the Shador Sanders Pro Day. I remember people were like, it's okay. We don't have to put Cam versus Shador. They're both nice. We'll end up with a good one either way. Yeah, how's that looking now? Dustin says, does Jared still have his press credentials? That's kind of a loaded question. If you're asking, am I recognized as a member of the media still, the answer is yes. So, like, I went to the press conference when Mike Borgonzi talked a couple of weeks ago after the trade deadline, and I didn't have any problem getting in there. Now, I do not have a game day credential to cover the Titans. I didn't apply for a game day credential. I never had a game day credential when I was at 102.5. Now, we had a couple of credentials at the station, and if I wanted to go with a credential, I could have asked for one and they would have given me one, or I could have asked the Titans for one and they would have given me one, but I never went with one. The last time I went to a football game, a Titans football game, with a media credential was the 2019 AFC Championship game. Like, that's the last time. So technically, I don't have a credential I can just grab and go walk into the stadium on Sunday on game day. But if I wanted to cover the game as a member of the press, I still work for SiriusXM. And 440 Sports is an accredited network. So, yeah, I still got my press credentials. And so on and so forth. Leo says, anybody who thinks Jeffery Simmons was wrong with his comments needs a psychiatrist. This is by far the worst offensive team ever assembled in the modern day of football, including Mr. Inaccurate. Clearly talking about Cam Ward. Again, I don't have a problem with what Simmons said as far as, is he wrong? No. Is he frustrated? Yes. I'm frustrated too. I've just never seen a situation where a player calls out the other side of the ball in the media, and that ends up being a good thing. And I agree, people need to hear the truth sometimes. And with Brian Callahan as the coach, the Titans do not tell the truth very often. Pee-wee program. I just have never seen a star player come out basically say, those guys cost us the game, and that work out accordingly. That's going to do it for us today. Great show. We're back tomorrow live at 2 o'clock. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends, again, the honest truth about the Titans and so on and so forth. And I do want to mention one other thing before we get out of here, because I will say that we're going to be live tomorrow at 2 o'clock. We may be live before that. And why would we be live before 2 o'clock? Because the Nashville Predators got beat yesterday by the Pittsburgh Penguins to wrap up the global series. That's over now. So they, I guess, are probably on the plane home. They'll get home at some point today. Who knows how long that's going to be? I don't know. I expect the Predators to fire Andrew Brunette when they get home. And I'd say poor guy, but Andrew Brunette has had enough rope. He's had more than enough of a chance to prove that he could fix this team. And the truth is, he can't. They look lifeless on offense. If it wasn't for a play Philip Forsberg made right before the end of regulation the other day, they would have lost both games to a crappy Pittsburgh team that is still trying to hold on to the championships they won a decade ago. But Andrew Brunette has had a good enough opportunity. It's not working with this roster. So the way it works in hockey, you can't fire the players, you fire the coach, you see if somebody else can do better, and if somebody can't do better, then you tear it down to the studs. It's time to see if somebody else can do better. And so I expect today, and I have no inside info on this, but I expect at some point, probably around 6 o'clock tonight, there will be an email that gets sent, Barry Trotz announcing that Andrew Brunette has been relieved of his duties and that Carl Taylor will get the call up from Milwaukee and he'll be the head coach of the Predators on Saturday night. If and when that happens, we'll go live. I expect it. And let me just say this. If Barry Trotz cannot pull the trigger on Andrew Brunette after the Global Series, then Barry Trotz can go too. Because loyalty is one thing, respect is another thing, but self-awareness is equally as important when it comes to running an entire operation. And Andrew Brunette's had enough of a chance. It's time to move on. And if Barry Trotz can't move on because he's too stubborn of the decision he made to hire Andrew Brunette, or the decision he made not to fire him during the season last year, or the decision he made not to fire him at the end of the year, then he can go to. That's it for us. See everybody. Thanks to Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. See everybody live tomorrow at 2 o'clock. And if the Predators fire Andrew Brunette, right after that.